Hi, everybody, and welcome back to EBNet Stream. One of the questions that I think the industry is grappling with at the moment is what are members using their savings pot withdrawals for? It's an interesting question. I've pondered many of the stats that have come out from some of the research that's been published, but I thought I'd reach out to Rob Southey, the head of asset consulting at Momentum Consultants and Actuaries, and have a quick chat with him over a cup of coffee. Welcome to EBNet Stream, Rob.
Thanks, Nathan.
I hope you brought your coffee.
I've got water.
Excellent. Good choice. So we're hearing from various sources that the two-pot savings withdrawals are being used for various different things. I know that you've got some interesting views around this, and I'm hoping that you can share some of those with us. So perhaps we should start with how much money ended up in members' hands from kind of two-pot date 1 September to, let's say, the end of January this year.
Yeah. Okay. So according to SARS and National Treasury, probably 43 billion was paid out in two-pot claims, of which 11 billion went to tax. So we're ending up with roughly 32 billion ended up in the economy.
That is a lot of money. Do you have any indication, or is there any kind of independent research around where that money was used or where it ended up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And up until fairly recently, the only sources of data that we had around what people were doing with it, with those withdrawals, were from surveys that companies, insurers and umbrella funds and other corporates, whenever they surveyed their members, they would ask them, what are you going to do with the money? And then that would then be captured, and that was then released into the market. So we've had quite a few of the providers coming out and saying, we surveyed their members and this is what they're doing. And so then I looked at that, and anecdotally, you listen to what people are saying within our company. I'm chatting to call center agents who are doing this, chatting to the Uber driver around, what are people doing? And I wasn't convinced that people using it for debt, to repay debt. And so there's new data that's come out that now gives more clarity on what people seem to be doing.
And this is the data that I want to get into today, because obviously I was reading the same survey as you were and kind of thinking, well, it's only a special kind of person who answers a survey in the first place. So you'd think, or you'd imagine they'd be the more responsible of the lot. And kind of where is this independent verification that we're looking for? So I'm hoping you can share some of that with us today.
Yeah, so it was actually a very good piece of research came out of the Marketing Bureau. In there, they go and use other economic data sources to source the data and then come up with the summary. And so their data sources were SARS, National Treasury, eNatus, which I'll get to with the motor vehicles, Stats SA, and the Credit Bureau. VCCB. So those are the data sources that they use. So instead of asking somebody what they're doing, you're now going into the economy and saying, what are we seeing that's different to kind of this time last year? And then you make sort of deductions. You don't know for a fact, but you start making deductions and start attributing things to other things, which I think is, when you look at the analysis and you read the reports, it's actually fairly sensible. It does seem to make a lot of sense.
So the big question then is, what are people using their savings pot withdrawals for?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you first what they're not doing it for, and I'll save what they are doing to the end to get the excitement up. So firstly, the one thing that they start is they're saying, are people using it for saving? Now that kind of doesn't make sense. Why would you take money out of your retirement fund and pay tax on it only to put it into a savings account or something else? That doesn't make sense. Retirement funds are immensely efficient cost-wise, and to take it out and go and invest in a retail unit trust or something, despite the fact that you could invest exclusively in equities, so you don't have the Regulation 28 problem, it just doesn't make sense. So, no surprise here, people were not using it for savings. So the other thing was, okay, well, are they going and buying luxuries, retail sales? And the retail, according to Stats SA, they weren't being used for luxury spends. So I don't think we should see a whole lot of people walking around with Rolexes. It doesn't appear that was the case at all. It did seem to be that they were using it for necessity. So the retail sales do seem to show that. You can go and get, I'm not going to go into all of the detail, but a lot of the details in that report. The other thing which was interesting for me was that it did appear that the two-pot withdrawals were being used as down payments on used motor vehicles. Not new, but on used. So in October, there was a spike in used car sales in the latter part of last year. But in October alone, it was the highest used car sales results than from 2012. So this is the highest monthly spike since 2012. So definitely something happened. You're then going and you're attributing it and saying, okay, it does look like that's down payments are being put on used vehicles, which then means, okay, you're buying something, but it does mean that you put a down payment, you need to pay, a monthly bill. So you're going to increase your credit requirements going forward. So then let's come down to the other one about debt repayment. Is it being used for debt repayment? And it really does seem that people have been using it to, as far as possible, clear debt or pay debt down, specifically in things like your store cards, secondly in things like your credit cards, and then the other one was education loans. So it definitely does appear as if people were being sort of sensible in trying to reduce that debt. One of the, I want to say it's an unfortunate thing about it is certainly in the case of cellular and education loans, those debts have increased since paid the debt down, and then it's increased again somewhat. So maybe then, just in summary, looking at all of those elements, it really does look like debt was a real source of use, well, a real use of those funds, which is great. It'll be interesting to see how that trend follows. Are people just using to buy down? Because this was one of the interesting discussions I had with a credit lender or micro lender, was that people were just paying down the debt so they could come and open a gap a little bit and then borrow more. We'll see through time whether that is in fact the case, or whether people are using it sensibly and reducing their debt.
Based on what you've read, and a final question for us to wrap up, based on the stats and the research that you've read, would you say that the member communication and financial advice around two-pot has been effective?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I do know that there's certainly a lot of confusion and maybe frustration, anger, call it what you want, about the taxation. I find it difficult, and it's, I'm in the industry, so I'm aware of all of this. I find it difficult to say that people weren't educated enough. There was so much education around it. I think people, maybe the language, sometimes you don't really understand until, it's like anything. You think you understand until you suddenly hit with something, you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that. And so I think that was one of the things. I do also think one needs to be and try and get people to don't listen to what you want to hear, listen to what the story is. So I don't know what I've seen substantial education around it. I find it difficult that people would have, expected more education. I do think that's one of those. Now that it's happened, people now understand, and so that'll certainly be, people won't be caught up by the tax again. That's for sure.
We see it in a lot of the queries that the pension funds adjudicators receive is around the tax. So thanks, Rob. Thanks for spending the time with us this morning. I'm looking forward to ongoing conversations around this topic, because we have seen an increase in claims again now that the new tax year has just started. So I'm looking forward to kind of exploring these findings and whether they continue along those veins in the near future. Thanks, Rob. Thank you for taking the time with us today.
Thanks, Natalie, and thanks for having me.